Good morning and welcome to the Office of the President's Daily Brief for Monday, August 13, 2012. This morning's brief is shared between Dr. Roger Luncheon, Head of the Presidential Secretariat, and Madam Gail Teixeira, Presidential Advisor on Governance, both of whom will update the public on some of the most recent occurrences in Linden, Region 10, and provide a chronology of those events of the Linden unrest and an analysis of the behavior of the political parties, the media, and the social networks, and others involved. I now introduce you first to Dr. Roger Luncheon.
Thank you, Kwame. In the wee hours of Friday, the 10th of August, protesters on the bridge, the Wismar-Mackenzie Bridge, attempted to burn it down. The TSU and the detachment stationed there repulsed that effort, and that led the protesters to unleash an orgy of arson on both sides of the river, on the Mackenzie side and on the Wismar side. Arson and a number of buildings, both public and private property, were torched. This activity was brought to the attention of the Commander-in-Chief, and he issued directions for the joint services that were mobilizing for an activity on Saturday to bring forward the date of movement into Linden to Friday morning. In bright sunlight and around 7:30, 8 a.m., the joint services moved into Linden. On the Mackenzie side, the joint services cleared obstacles on the road and the bridges, and in a short time, Linden, the Mackenzie side, the eastern side of the river, was cleared and open. On the bridge, the joint services moved to the western end, where the protesters had occupied and ultimately secured both the eastern and the western end of the bridges. By Sunday, the joint services were fully prepared and moved into Wismar proper. Throughout the day on Sunday, the joint services engaged protesters who confronted the law enforcement and the security detachments with Molotov cocktail, with firebombs, destroying military vehicles, injuring military and joint services servicemen. As I sit here this morning to announce that the bridge is secured, portions of the road on Burnham Drive, portions are under the control of the joint services, and going out to the Wisrock Junction, the joint services are engaged in exchanges with the confronting protesters who continue to use Molotov cocktails and firebombs in their control. Over on the eastern end, 2 days of opening up has clearly shown what were the instincts, what were the intentions, what was the desire of the Lindeners in Mackenzie. They are freely moving, traveling by road to and from destinations including Georgetown, crossing the bridge into Wismar and back freely. Businesses are starting to open. I'm advised that the banks will be replenishing their ATMs more often and opening for business. Indeed, the benefit, the consequence, the aftermath of the Joint Services intervention in Linden, and particularly on the Mackenzie side, has clearly shown what was being repressed, what was being denied, what was being frustrated by protesters who had been vanquished by the Joint Services.
And now for a chronology of events of the Linden unrest, here is Madam Gail Teixeira.
Good morning, everybody. This is the 27th day of the Linden unrest. What was supposed to be a 5-day protest action from July 18th to the 23rd. I think it's important because there are many people that are writing, commenting on the events as they've unfolded, to remind the public of the chronology of events that took place. In particular, the government's interventions to try to reach a resolution and a return to normalcy. The government, as one is aware, on the night of July 18th, after the shootings, immediately released a statement saying that it wanted a full investigation to what happened. On July 19th, July 23rd, July 31st, August the 6th, August the 8th were meetings with stakeholders, in particular with the regional delegation that met with the Office of the President. It is important also to remember that Mr. Granger consistently from July 22nd ensured and stated that he would always support an attempt for a resolution or a resolution of the events in Linden and a resolution of the issues in Linden, and he would concur with the agreement reached, any agreement reached between the Government of Guyana and the Region 10 delegation. And the public is aware that we had been meeting the regional delegation that was comprised of Dr. Rupert Rubenrein for the APNU, Vanessa Kisoon, who is the geographic MP for the APNU, Mr. Sharma, Chairman for Region 10, Aubrey Norton was also a representative, and Mr. Nigel Hughes, who stated he was a special guest invited by Mr. Sharma Solomon and was not representing the AFC. The many discussions that went on, the 23rd, 36th, and 8th, consistently the government tried to ensure that we had agreement, and I think the public is well aware that the decision of July 19th with the stakeholders to have a commission of inquiry proceeded on a parallel line and was concluded on August the 2nd. And these terms of reference were agreed to, so that specifically the Region 10 delegation was dealing with the issues of Region 10, in particular the electricity subsidy and issues relating to electricity. What is very clear when one examines the meetings, the contents of the meetings, that the Region 10 delegation, in particular a number of persons on that delegation, were not in great haste to reach a resolution. The terms of reference, when we agreed on July 23rd, based on the proposal of the President for a technical team, and we had agreed as a basic principles, which were sent to them on July 24th. It took until July 31st meeting for there to be some kind of verbal response to what the government had presented, verbally and in writing, to the Region 10. So another week had passed. When we met on the July 31st to go through the technical team draft terms of reference and the economic proposals that they were pushing for, that we agreed on August the 3rd that the government and the Region 10 would exchange their draft terms of reference on August the 3rd. This did not happen. The government submitted theirs as committed on August the 3rd. The Region 10 delegation did not do so until the 5th. There were no economic proposals submitted between July 23rd meeting until the night of August the 9th. On August the 6th, there was some progress. On August the 8th, we had come to a point where the terms of reference were initialed by Dr. Luncheon on behalf of the government and Mr. Solomon on behalf of the Region 10 delegation. And then we said, could there still be a return to normalcy? Because we had clearly reached a benchmark by the initialing of the draft terms of reference for the technical team to look at the electricity issues in Linden and the subsidy. Again, there was a playing for time. Again, there was a playing for time, and that we now they could not commit themselves to having the roads cleared because we now had to deal with the economic proposals. And that again, at each meeting, the team was the same. Now, on August the 8th, they committed to send the economic proposals, and we would have met on August the 10th. But it's important for the public to know a couple of things that you may have heard, but to re-emphasize this, and that is that the government had been very clear in the inclusion of the representatives of business, religion, labor, etc. The July 31st meeting, this was a clear understanding between the President, Mr. Solomon, on the eve of that meeting that the regional representatives and the private sector would be present. The July 31st meeting, they basically kicked the private sector representatives out. And in fact, following that, we have Mr. Sharma Solomon's email saying that the issue of involvement of other stakeholders, including regional stakeholders, would have to be examined with agreed-on modalities. And therefore, basically, he was saying no one else could come into the meetings to represent Region 10 except himself, Mr. Solomon, Ms. Kissoon, Dr. Rupert Rubenrein, Mr. Aubrey Norton, and Mr. Nigel Hughes. No one else was to be part of this whole process. It is important, too, to recognize that the playing for time obviously had a sinister agenda in terms of, one, extending the unrest in Linden indefinitely, but also, two, it exposes their duplicity. Having met us on August the 6th and some progress being made, and setting a date for the next meeting for August the 8th, where it was hoped that we could conclude the technical team's terms of reference. On August the 7th, public meetings are held in Linden by the same persons, Mr. Solomon, Ms. Kissoon, Mr. Norton, with additional forces such as the AFC representative in Linden and others. They have public meetings where they clearly point out that they're going to continue resisting regardless, and that they begin to use terminology that is extremely inflammatory. which of course they've been doing all along in terms of, at all the meetings we know, they have not been informing the public in Linden about what was going on in the meetings with the president. They either misinformed or did not inform them at all of the progress of the talks. And in fact used language that said this to do what you were doing. 7th meeting is particularly significant. The public meetings are particularly significant because at this meeting there are comments made that clearly point in the direction that they were not, when they came to the meeting on August 8th, going to agree to anything. Mr. Norton is quoted as saying that the people of Linden need to remain organized, and noting that we live in a world of technology, we should be able to send each other quick text messaging, get out there, the demons are coming. He avowed that this was a way to make sure that they got what they wanted. He went on to say that they had to teach the government a lesson. The AFC representative at that meeting, who lives in Linden, a Miss Minerva Munro, said that there was no retreat, no surrender. And this is after the August 6th meeting, where there has been some progress, and the commitment of the August 6th meeting is that by the 8th, we should be in a position to conclude it. And I'm not saying we meaning government, I'm saying this was the sentiment of the meeting of August the 6th with the Region 10 delegation and the government of Guyana. But most interesting of all, later on, takes place when Ms. Kissoon, who is chairing the meeting, then says that calling on people to share their phone numbers, text words, etc., and that when they receive the text words, the demons are coming, that this is a mobilization call, meaning that their presence was needed on the streets. On August the 8th, the same delegation comes to meet the government. We receive and meet them, and we've come to agreed on terms of reference for the technical team. Again, they're told this means that we can have a restoration of normalcy, streets cleared, bridges cleared, etc. And again, they say, no, we have to meet on the 10th. As Dr. Ryan said, they are low-lying fruit that have to be dealt with, and therefore until those matters are concluded, which include the economic proposals, there will be no clearing of the streets. It is regrettable that the delegation that the government has been meeting have not been fair and open with Linden, and therefore stalling and delaying the process to the point of which on August the 10th morning, where protesters inexplicably hit the streets at 2 a.m. in the morning, which some people have called a peaceful protest, which I've never heard of a peaceful protest at 2 a.m. in the morning, and therefore agitate and lead to events that follow afterwards. And they are now saying that it is the presence of soldiers, etc., when the joint services have clearly pointed out in a public statement that there was no such operation on the morning of Friday, the 10th at 2 a.m. when the protest started and the burning of the bridges started. So I thought it was important to try to go through everything as they have happened, because sometimes people are unclear of the staging of the issues. The President has met with many stakeholders, had many meetings with the APNU leader, Mr. Granger, who is also the leader of opposition and now leader of the PNC. He has had meetings with a variety of stakeholders, including joint meetings of the APNU and the AFC. He's been in constant contact with various leaders and stakeholders throughout the 27 days. And therefore, the government has exercised tremendous restraint and patience in trying to reach a resolution of the issues in Linden as of August the 10th and up to August the 10th.
We need to attempt an analysis of these events, particularly because we are aware ample evidence exists being produced hourly, daily, that there are versions out there, not only of not what took place, but also why it took place. Gail has mentioned what transpired or is transpiring for peaceful protests. And nary a word has appeared in the press, particularly in the hostile media, that even questions, much less repudiate, this assertion about peaceful protest. As far as the hostile media is concerned, the proof is given. And the fact that arson is rampant and firebombing is taking place and Molotov cocktails are being thrown, the fact that there is blockade forcibly, the fact that there is active prevention and ongoing and repetitive and consistent prevention of clearing of block roads and bridges has not allowed the GHRAs and the Kaito News and the Demerara Waves to ever once pronounce on how peaceful is peaceful. And the talks, as we approach the 6th and the 7th and the 8th of August, and particularly after the events of the night of Thursday and the early morning of Friday, we are suddenly assailed with how close we were to conclusion. And that indeed, it was just the dotting of the I's and the crossing of the T's that would have brought a solution. Gail has mentioned the incitement, not only by our active interlocutors sitting with us against the very process of conciliation, of bringing the dispute to an end, but also the efforts made by others who injected themselves into the process, not with any altruistic motive, but to ensure, in their words, that the pressure is kept up, that agreements should not be made because agreements are for fools. This is the background to which we have to respond and to inform the Guyanese people. This is the aspect of the analysis that has to be brought to the attention of Guyanese. We cannot help but being frustrated. The President indicated on the 27th of July my intentions to visit, clear the roads. How else would he get in to Linden? And out there voices raised in all sorts of diatribe because the government and officials would not enter Linden, and at the side of their mouth and by dint of their propaganda and their efforts and their incitement to prevent his entry into Linden. The joint services, and they have attracted condemnation from the hostile media. The GHRA would have us believe that this is a most injudicious intervention. Where is the GHRA today, advising the Guyanese people about what is transpiring on the Mackenzie side, a return to normalcy. Thousands of Lindeners enjoying a respite from the intrigues, enjoying some normalcy that has been brought by the presence and the efforts of the joint service, and the promise that the same holds out for the residents of Wismar and for those communities negatively influenced by the blockage in Region 8 and Region 9, and those aspects of our economy and service sector, the people. GHRA isn't telling us about that. GHRA would have us believe that somehow, by magic, by dint of these same duplicitous negotiations that sat with us and have been engaging the government, that this same outcome would have been created sometime soon, maybe even before the 10th of August. That is what the hostile media, that is what GHRA would have you, the Guyanese, believe. And then the absurdity, the way in which they take Guyanese intelligence for granted, that the PPP is responsible for the arson. And not only is responsible, that we have to come to Georgetown and further afield to get Indian Skuli people from the PPP to go into Linden, where 99% of the PPP supporters are black, to commit arson. This is what they would have us believe. This is what they would foist on the Guyanese people. The President has insisted that there must be a return to normalcy. The President has conceded that peaceful protest is a right that he respects, that indeed, before 1992, that was an essential aspect of the political expression of the People's Progressive Party. And we're not engaged in a game of cat and mouse. The damage that has been done has been enormous. But with the will and the commitment of the players for a productive endpoint, we will see a conclusion of the conflict. We will see a return to normalcy. We will see a resolution of this issue of the tariff and the attendant issues put on the table by the representatives of Region 10. It is indeed sad that the developments that have taken place since then have indeed taken place and will have tremendous cost, tremendous effort for us to undo and for Linden to continue to progress according to the intentions of the PPP civil administration.
Dr. Lynchon, and I'd like to add, though, that in the contributors to the misinformation and inciting and inflaming people have been, in many instances, the postings on the Facebook, on the Bench Cop radio and internet, The media has in many ways contributed to what has been disinformation, misinformation, in many cases inciting people, injecting strong racial language, targeting people, naming people, listing people, putting their photographs on the net. We have had yesterday postings of 10 members of the PPP in Linden whose faces were posted and that they were threatened and named as being responsible for activities in Linden. We have had in other instances on Facebook people who have been sympathetic, in other cases persons who are not even connected to us, who have not even voted for the PPP, but who were so overwhelmed and overwrought by the behavior of the regional delegation. They too have been named on many Facebook sites, have been called out, and their photographs posted, and their lives are basically threatened. The inflammatory language, the targeting of people, the misinformation was all part of this grand plan to make sure that there was going to be no resolution, that this thing would be dragged out. As people said a few days after the shooting, and they came to the 5th day, which should have been the last day of the protest, there were those who said this was going to be stretched out to 50 days and 90 days. The fact that the persons who said that were the same persons who were meeting with the government team from July 19th to August the 8th. We call on people who are seeing these postings to, wherever it's possible and whenever it's possible, to post abuse reports to the, whether it is Yahoo or Google or whatever. There are some treacherous postings on Demerara Wave that are dripping with racial language and racial threats and ethnic attacks. Demerara Wave should not be allowing this to go on their website, but we also call on the individual members, do not be caught up in this. Post abuse reports with one of the host bodies, such as Yahoo or Google. And in the case of what are the ISPs, the Internet Service Providers in Guyana, that your voices should be heard in terms of the kind of rhetoric and language and inciting of our people that is being posted. We must make sure as a people that these interventions by those who want to make sure that the country is destabilized, and in many cases the political parties have not come out to condemn the blockage or the virtual paralysis of life in Linden and in the community, or the impact on regions 7, 8, and 9, or the impact on the economy, that the political parties in Guyana also must come out and stand for all Guyanese, and to recognize that after 23 days, the ratcheting up by the elements, or certain elements in Linden at 2 o'clock in the morning, led to a situation where the joint services, as Dr. Luncheon said, brought forward their planned schedule for August the 11th in order to restore some normalcy. And to reiterate which Dr. Luncheon said, the majority of people in Linden wanted this to end. When they went to meetings with the same regional people we were meeting and said, when is the end game? When will this end? When can we get back to normal? Many of those people were chased out of meetings. They were targeted, they were named, and therefore the Lindeners on the Mackenzie side, I believe, are happy today to start to get their lives back together again. And I'm sure that WISMA will come under the same restoration of normalcy to allow the majority of people in Linden who wanted this to end. Those elements who were hell-bent on creating mayhem and mob rule, we will see what will happen over the next few days. But the majority of people want to return to their normal lives, to work. And the greatest tragedy, probably of all the things that were burnt, is the 1 Mile primary school. The unbelievable burning of a school, to say to these 830 children in the first day of September, where will they go to school? These irresponsible, reckless persons have now put children at risk in terms of having their right to education. And why is the GHRA and others not concerned about the rights of these 830 children whose school was burnt? And so we call on Guyanese that we will keep bringing updates to you, and that we believe strongly that the Lindeners want to return to normalcy, and the Mackenzie side have showed that we were right in believing that and working towards that. Thank you.